Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the incredible connections they create. I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen.
And I'm Lisa Lisson, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin? We are your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's head out on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of togetherness. This is the second installment in our series that celebrates the holiday meals of yesteryear. Back on episode 45, we talked about how Thanksgiving dinners across the United States looked during the 1930s. This week, we're going to go back a full century to discuss what was on Easter tables across the country in the 1920s.
So I just love researching in newspapers, and I use newspapers a lot in my genealogy research. And what I find is that when I'm looking for individuals, I get very distracted by reading the newspapers from back in the day, so to speak. And so that's kind of, I think, part of a little bit of how we came up with this original idea back in the fall. But in today's episode, as we talk about these Easter celebrations, the newspapers that we're going to be referring to actually, I pulled these examples from over at newspapers.com. It is a subscription newspaper website that I actually use quite a bit on my own genealogy research. I can love spending, an hour or two or longer going through the newspapers as part of my research, but also to really understand what was happening at the time my ancestors were living. Because when I understand what was happening and what was in the newspapers, you start to understand what was important to them, what was influencing their choices that they made about everything from what they ate to maybe where they moved to. And it's an important part of learning about our ancestors, and, well, it's just really enjoying and seeing how things have evolved and changed over the years.
Lisa, when we first did this last year, I cannot believe how much I was into just literally one page of a newspaper from so long ago. It was so fun just to see the ways they fill the space, the things they're advertising. It's been a lot of fun. So I'm excited that we are making this a series every, couple times a year. We're going to throw back to some of this, and especially around food. I think it's really interesting. So since it's getting to be near Easter time, I'm curious, Lisa, what was on the menu around Easter in Washington in the 1920s?
Well, this is really a lot of fun. And as you can tell, I have converted Ashley to newspaper research. Just thought I'd throw that out there, guys. Anyway, and so we're talking about Washington. We're talking about Washington State. I'm actually looking at an issue of the Spokesman Review from Spokane, Washington, and it is the April 15th, 1927 edition. And back in the pages, back on page 9, we find this really fabulous section called Marianne Plans Her Work. And this is a really cool, it looks like it's a regular feature, I think, probably. And it's a little section, and it has recipes, and it has simple menus for the week. And one of them being, this week happens to include Easter dinner on Sunday. And I thought this was really cool to see what they had compared to maybe what we have today. And so I thought this was interesting. So for this particular suggestion for this menu plan for Easter Sunday was baked chicken with giblets used the night before. So apparently they had been bulk cooking earlier. So baked chicken, nut dressing. So I'm not really 100% sure what that would be, but I guess some type of dressing. I don't know it doesn't indicate what kind of nut. I don't know if it would be in my head, I think pecan, but then again, I live in the South. So
maybe walnuts?
That's a possibility, yes. She doesn't really. A corn
chestnuts?
souffle.
I know chestnut stuffing is a thing. I've not had it, but I've seen that. And I think that's a Southern thing.
I've heard of that. I've never seen it in the South, actually. But I think of that as a New England one. But I'm
maybe,
not real sure. But I don't know what kind of nuts they have out there. Corn souffle was another thing. Definitely makes sense. Mashed potatoes, bread, butter, asparagus salad with mayonnaise. You know, we see asparagus is very common, I
Mm-hmm.
think, today to
Spring,
see
yeah.
on any kind of spring. And then an Astor Special Brick ice cream with yellow custard sauce.
Say what now?
Yeah, and then this one needs repeating. An Astor Special Brick ice cream with yellow custard sauce. I don't know if that's a special type of ice cream.
Was it a brand, maybe?
That's
No.
what I'm wondering if
Well,
it's a brand.
hmm.
If it's a brand, and then some kind of yellow custard sauce. So I don't know flavor wise. I don't know if it's would be like a vanilla maybe. Honestly, I don't know that much. We need to look at the history of ice cream at some point, Ashley,
Oh.
and think about refrigeration. This is 1927, and thinking about potentially flavors and things like that. Another
Mm-hmm.
story for another day. But ice cream, and then coffee to finish off with dessert, which is certainly we see that a lot. So baked chicken, whereas today I think the more traditional is a baked ham,
Mm-hmm. Or lamb.
although or lamb, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Although in growing up, I think we usually had chicken. Come to think of it, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I
Corn
think.
souffle, certainly, yeah, some kind of corn dish usually. This
Mm-hmm.
is a very heavy on the carbs, I will say that. I mean, between the corn souffle, the mashed potatoes, and the bread pudding, or the bread and butter, there I would be needing a nap by the time that was over with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that, and I thought it wasn't all that different. So different, but not different from say
Mm-hmm.
today's um, Easter dinners. So I did. I definitely enjoyed that little sample. The interesting thing about this particular, I would say, article or this section is there's also has a section where she's answered questions from readers. So she's kind of apparently this is an ongoing section, and she answers questions from readers that they send in, asking her about her recipes that she's made, and you know what does she recommend for substitutions, or why didn't something work well for her. But again, that thought it was a really interesting
That
Easter menu.
that's funny too, thinking to, that long ago, whereas now you could leave a comment on somebody's website saying, "Hey, could I substitute this?" Or, "Would it work without this?" And you can get kind of a pretty immediate response. Back then, you got to write a letter, mail it in, wait for the next issue to be published. So,
Exactly. I mean, it was definitely going to be not a fast turnaround there. So you have to
yeah.
do a little more planning with this type thing. I did as I look a little bit through this article, but the the Astor there's an Astor candy company that it mentions. So I think the Astor
Oh,
ice cream might be you know, that was a brand. I think you were absolutely right on that. So
okay.
yeah. So I just found an aside addendum made on the about the ice cream. It says, for dessert, of course, you will want ice cream. For what is any child's party without ice cream? Astor Candy Company has some special Easter bricks of ice cream that are quite appropriate for such a party. So this would have been a specialty product and actually a little bit of an advertising kind of thing going on.
Interesting. So by bricks, is that like, I'm thinking now, like when I was a kid, my aunt used to have those, like, yeah, it was like a brick shaped instead of a carton,
Mhm.
right? Of ice cream. So that's
That would
probably
be
the,
my thought. That's
mm,
what I think it would probably be. And it was probably maybe they had special colors or something
yeah. So
for
yeah,
Easter.
even just the way packaging has changed for foods is
Yeah.
interesting.
So Ashley, what about in Louisiana? Let's go a different part of the country. And what did you find at Easter for Louisiana?
Well, this one is from the Saturday Morning Shreveport Times, April 16th, 1927. And actually, I'm curious. So I actually just looked up what day Easter was because, again, this was a print newspaper. So this article came out the day before Easter. So it wouldn't give you much time to do menu planning now. Like if I was trying to, for my food website, if I was trying to publish something to inspire people for their Easter menus, I would do it, a little ahead of Easter. So just an interesting note. But there's a section called Times, Pure Food, and Household Topics. And they have a section that's called Dainty Menus Are Offered, which I thought was pretty adorable for Easter dainty menus. Sister Mary suggests varied courses for Easter day serving. And this is by Sister Mary. So Sister Mary says many hostesses find it easier to serve a few persons at a time than have two parties. With this idea in mind, a Sunday evening supper as well as an Easter breakfast is suggested. So now we're hosting twice a day because apparently that's easier than once a day with more people. I don't know how I feel about that because I feel like you'd have to like re-clean in between, and that would just be,
Yeah.
I don't know about that,
It
Sister Mary, but
depends on how much help you get.
yeah, that's true. And if you had a whole bunch of kids to clean all the dishes and stuff. So for Easter breakfast, Sister Mary's recommending sections of grapefruit, molded cereal with heavy cream, and garnish of orange jelly. I don't know what molded cereal means. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I'm wondering, would it be something would you make like well, molded I mean, I think of cereal like a grain or like a
I'm picturing Cheerios and green Jello.
okay, I
That can't be
probably
right.
isn't Cheerios and green Jello, but I'm wondering, like, I mean, can you mold oatmeal?
Well, steel cut oats are thicker, but
I have
yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And then planked ham and eggs, crisp rolls, waffles, maple syrup, and coffee. Now, it says underneath, if you happen to have green sherbet, I always want to say sherbet, but it's sherbet, right? Green sherbet glasses or cups, serve the grapefruit in them. Otherwise, use the shells of the fruit or whatever sort of glass you happen to have and garnish it with a sprig of fresh mint. Choose a white or light colored cereal. Oh, I didn't. Here we go. We're getting the
Okay.
explanation. Choose a white or light colored cereal, preferably fine grained, and after thorough cooking, mold between 2 tablespoons to make eggs. Garnish with the jelly and pass cream to serve. Okay, so it's like cream of wheat type of thing.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
making like little egg shapes. Okay, for Easter.
But you're molding these between 2 tablespoons, just so
Right.
you know, individually.
Yes. I mean,
Sister Mary, I don't know if I could do this.
and then the dinner, her Easter dinner menu is orange and pineapple cocktail. And I believe that's a fruit cocktail, not a beverage cocktail. Cream of spinach soup, olives, crisp celery, no soggy celery, roast duckling, sweetbread peas, and applesauce, and then sweetbread and curly endive salad, toasted crackers, chocolate icebox cake, and coffee. So you're doing all of this after you've spent the early hours of the morning molding your eggs out of cereal. Um,
That's intense.
yeah, it
And it,
is.
and I'm just looking at the foods because the foods are definitely so the orange and pineapple cocktail, I kind of get that. I would have
Right.
heard, spinach soup. Okay, that would a little different, but cream of spinach
Yeah.
soup is pretty popular. But these others, I'm not. I guess I wouldn't have associated from a personal history of these would be Easter
Mm-hmm.
foods. I
It
think
sounds a
that's
little
an
Christmassy,
interesting,
yeah? Like a duckling? I don't know.
yeah, maybe a little bit with
Yeah.
that.
And then there's a description that says the Easter supper. The Sunday night supper can be served buffet fashion or on small tables in the living room or on the dining table in the dining room. It's one of the most informal and altogether delightful ways to entertain. So it's informal when you have a roast duckling and multiple dishes that involve sweetbreads, apparently. So their Easter supper is stuffed eggs, oysters in a Creole oysters a la Creole in puff cases, so like a puff pastry, celery and radishes, Easter punch, which do we know what that is? Maybe there's a
Yeah, the recipe's
reference.
a little further over.
Oh, okay. Um, little cakes, salted nuts, and candy. So, and it walks you through, like the stuffed eggs are served as an hors d'oeuvre and quite piquant and appetizing. Allow 1/2 egg for each person to be served. So you can't be very hungry.
Easter punch is basically sugar water, guys.
Yeah, okay. Pour 4 cups water, 2 cups sugar, 1 medium-sized pineapple, 1 to 2 cups lemon juice, a cup of orange juice, and 2 cups of ice water. Okay. Well, I mean, gosh, I think back to Kool-Aid. We used to, how much sugar went into Kool-Aid? That was
One
a lot.
packet and one cup, and you're good to go. I
So,
still remember that.
the other fun thing about this particular spread is it's got that Easter stuff and then it's got ads. So like there's from like a flour company, it's got for your Easter dessert and it's, trying to get you to buy this particular brand of flour. And then you've got a grocery company that's got their ad for how much different things cost, which is always a bit of an interesting reality check that back then 2 dozen fresh country eggs, 2 dozen limit per dozen 19 cents. 24-pound sack of self-rising flour was $1. Uh, so, 5 pounds of sugar, 32 cents. Pork chops were 27 cents a pound. So slightly different than now.
Love it. And then there's the Louisiana coffee ad.
Oh, and this coffee company is like partnered with a tableware company. Rogers, it says free Rogers tableware, beautiful pure silver plated uh I guess William Rogers and Son tableware given as premiums for certificate in every tin.
So I remember this concept when I was a kid that you could, when you would buy certain products, if you would cut out maybe a certain label or proof of purchase, whatever that was for them, and you would save them up enough, and then you would send them in, and you could get dishes and things,
Yeah.
tableware and stuff like that. Yeah.
They had Pepsi points when I was a kid. Like you would
Hmm.
save the Pepsi points, and then my dad was a smoker. Was he still is? Well, anyway, he would save the Marlboro miles and send
Uh-huh.
those in for things. Yeah, very interesting.
Mhm.
This makes sense though. A spoon for coffee. That
Mhm.
makes sense.
But it would be not just a spoon, it could be anything, like you would say, you
Mm.
would kinda, it would be a process, so it wouldn't
Oh,
be
to
just like
build
a
up your
one-time thing.
collection.
You could build up your collections, kind of the same way, what was the name of the stamps you would get at the grocery store?
Oh yeah, Monopoly.
Oh, they were green, but I remember that, they were green. What are they called? And I remember putting them into little books and turning them in. I remember my mother having a lot, and they were gonna do away with the program at her grocery store, and we, like, were filling these books with all these stamps. That was kind of the kids' project, so I forget what we got, but something cool I remember, but
Yeah, they had something kind of like that in more recent times with like McDonald's and you have a little Monopoly board and you could unlock things. I
mm.
feel like it was partnered with a was it partnered with a grocery store or a grocery store here also had a Monopoly thing. I don't know. Anyway, it's all the gamifying it, trying to get you to buy more stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, same thing. I think kinda like the point system, like when you go to a coffee store or something like that
Hmm.
these days.
I'm more apt to earn more points on stuff like that probably. Are you stuck in a cooking rut? Let's spice things up. If you're tired of cooking the same things over and over again and feel like things have gotten a little bit stale in the kitchen, I have the perfect resource for you. Let me help spark some creativity in your kitchen with Spice Up Your Life, a free guide that I've created that's packed with over 25 ideas for you to try out. Turn to this choose your own adventure style guide whenever you're looking to add a little excitement to mealtime. To download your copy of Spice Up Your Life, head to bigflavors.co/spice. So we've covered Washington and Louisiana. How about Maine?
So I actually pulled the Bangor Daily News of the 1928 Easter edition, or April 3rd, 1928. And in this particular one, so we're way up here, in Maine, New England, and we've got an article. This paper is talking about, in they're talking live topics of interest to the modern housewife.
Oh.
Remember the times, guys. So, and this one is actually an article on ham, the Easter meat. And it's by Marie Guild, Department of Food Economics at the Armour and Company. So this would have been, it looks like, uh, kind of an ad type thing, but still at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, by this company had the Armour Company has an actual Department of Food Economics. So we're getting information from them. And she says, Easter is the greatest of the spring's feast days throughout the whole world. Even before the Christmas, even before the Christian era, the festival of Easter Month was observed and dedicated to the goddess of light and spring. In olden days, it was a festival of new life, symbolic of recreation and growing things. The feast was held at the time of the spring planting, and Easter Day was the first Sunday after the full moon following the vernal equinox. So she's given us the history of kind of Easter and that it's traditionally the springtime and it has been the time when we would have the feast, and that ham was a very common food to kind of use to celebrate this time period as well. You can use ham for breakfast or you can use it for Easter dinner. And so really people would buy like a whole star ham for Easter, and that was she was recommending that buying the whole ham was more economical. So,
Yeah.
let's think about this. More profitable for the company, obviously. And she recommends to have it cut in half, and then have this cut the center pieces to the however thick you wanted it for broiling or baking. And then she would give us some recipes, some ideas for actually preparing that Easter ham. She does recommend some different methods for actually, preparing an Easter ham. And one of them would be to plunge it into boiling water and boil it for 10 minutes and then reduce the heat and simmer it for 20 minutes for each pound. And
Wow.
then once you take it out, you take off the rind and then you can bake it for half an hour with the fat side up, and that's, to help use that to baste the ham as it cooks. And she also recommends basting it additionally with a mixture of vinegar and 1 cup vinegar, 1 cup ham liqueur, and 1 teaspoonful of dry mustard. And then sprinkle it with brown sugar. And then dot it with cloves and continue baking until done. Notice she doesn't tell you actually when it's done, but okay.
Just till it's done.
She's going to make that assumption that we know. And then another way would be to simmer it in a sweet cider was another way that she
Mm,
recommended doing it as well.
I love a
But then
sweet
she
and
also got
savory.
in
Mm,
sweet, yeah, kind of that sweet savory. And we see that today, that ham with the brown sugar on top, the
mm-hmm.
cloves, that type of thing. She also did another article on using eggs for the main dish and how you can actually use those to help use as the main dish because they're symbolic for the Easter and the spring season. So, but I am noticing a bit of a theme as we've talked through a couple of these at this point, and that is that you're having articles that are written. These are good articles, good
Yeah.
from the time and in depth, but they're a teaching article, much like you might see blog posts today. But they're sponsored basically by companies, so it's a bit of an advertisement as well.
Yeah. And newspapers had to make that money,
I know, I know. Well, that's true. Okay. All right, what about Florida, Ashley? Let's head down south and see what you found down there.
So this one is from the Tampa Daily Times, and this one was Wednesday, April 6th, 1927. So this was the same year as the other one that I talked about earlier, but this in Florida, they were more on my line with it where we're going to give you a little time. So this is like a week and a half before Easter, give you a little more time to plan. They do have a section for seasonable menus. It says it's a weekly feature of the Department of Cookery intended as a guide in the selection of pleasing and nutritious meals at a nominal cost. So it's an interesting thing to look at just to see what people are, what they consider a meal plan for the week. But specifically, some stuff that gets a little more into the seasonality of this is there's an article called "Light Dessert is Best for Warmer Days. Pie popularity wanes with coming of summer." So it's just spring, but we're talking they're already gearing you up for summer. And this is by Barrel Fotis Kitchen. I don't know if that was a company or what, but so they say with the coming of warm days, pies and hot puddings and other substantial desserts wane steadily in popularity and are supplanted by the lighter and daintier appearing desserts, benefiting the season of spring and more acceptable to the capricious and rather jaded spring appetites. I just like the fluffiness with which they're writing this is entertaining to me.
I did have to stop and think, okay, exactly what is she saying?
Yeah. So they talk about that, such desserts fall into the general classifications of gelatine desserts, fruit desserts, white of egg desserts, rice and tapioca desserts, etc. And then I mean, this is a very, I don't know, the angle with which the writer went about this is kind of funny because, like, down a little lower, it's like they talk about pineapple gelatine pineapple whip glorified pineapple and rice concoction. Like they've really got opinions apparently about these different dishes. Um, they do mention that though most of these quote sweets call for eggs, especially in the whites, this is not expensive as of an item to make at this season of year. And it must be remembered that in adding eggs, it not only adds flavor and appearance to the product, but food value as well, which justifies, even in limited food budgets, the slight added cost. So I don't know if this was sponsored by the Egg Council or something, but in the seasonable menus section, there's a little note on how to make peas in mint jelly salad, which is apparently a delightful spring salad. So you make a pint of lemon jello, and while the mixture is hot, you add a bunch of fresh mint leaves and let them stand in the hot liquid until well flavored. Color very lightly with green coloring, and then cook and when the mixture begins to congeal, which is always a word you want to hear when you're cooking, add 1.5 cups cooked peas, half a cup of chopped celery or cucumber, mold and chill, and serve it with French dressing to which mint has been added. So for me, this one went off the rails real bad.
Oh, this is just. I mean, I've
um,
heard the mint and the peas. Now, I
right.
definitely have heard that, and I still see that today.
Yes.
But
But
that French dressing with it? Oh,
yeah. So that, well, but you're adding mint to the French dressing, so that makes it seasonal, right?
mm,
um, something that I thought was really interesting on this spread was the Department of Cookery gives a whole section on vegetable dinners that satisfy. So that's kind of like, we're seeing a lot more of that in recent years with, eating less meat, not necessarily being vegetarian, but less meaty things and having it still feel like a meal. They do talk about like Lenten meals or an occasional meatless dinner. Um, but that's talking about can't using canned fish, which I understand from the like Catholicism point of view doesn't count as meat, although to me it's an animal. So like it's not vegetarian, but
right.
they do have a section on vegetable dinners that satisfy, and it's got things such as menu one is tomato puree, rice with green peas au gratin, egg and lettuce salad, strawberry blanc mange, and coffee. So they have a couple different menus there. One of them includes mock sausage with apple rings. So I'm like really curious what that was made out of.
I would be curious too, because when I first looked at this, I thought eh, as from a vegetable standpoint, there's not a lot of protein in these that
Yeah.
I'd be hungry in an hour. But
Uh-huh.
I'm curious as to, yeah,
The mock
mock
sausage.
sausage was what was that in
Yeah.
1927?
There's also some interesting stuff on the spread about decorating your Easter table. So they recommend a hat box tied with a large bow of ribbon, with tiny hat boxes with individual covers. They also say that an Easter bonnet or garden hat filled with little tiny spring flowers and violets is another effective treatment for the table. Lilies are ideal for the occasion, but are more formal than sweet peas and a couple other ones. They talk about for children's parties, the centerpiece might be a rabbit or duck arrangement with Easter eggs at each place, or cardboard eggs containing small favors. And it gives you ideas for entertainment. They'll enjoy an egg hunt and an egg race, painting of Easter eggs, and making Easter bonnets after being supplied with crepe papers, pins, scissors, etc. They didn't have Pinterest back then, so this was where they had to go.
1927 Pinterest.
Yeah. They talk about the food served at the function should be light and dainty, fit harbingers of spring. To this end, the dessert may well be one of whipped cream or stiffly beaten whites of eggs, a whipped gelatine for the following luncheon is suggested, and then it gives you an idea. It talks about like a bird's nest salad that's got you mash cream cheese and add enough thick cream or dressing to form into the shape of eggs, and arrange on a nest of shredded lettuce. The cheese may be slightly colored if desired. So mashing cream cheese and thick cream
What would that do?
and put So you're just eating cream cheese on lettuce, right? I mean, cream cheese is delicious. It's
What it
just a
sounds
little
like.
odd. There is an interesting tip on preserving eggs in small quantities for the family to use. There are two commonly used methods which give satisfactory results. The first is immersing of eggs in lime water, though some think that the flavor is injured by the lime, which penetrates the pores of the shell. The other method is by using water glass parentheses sodium silicate, 1 part to 9 parts of freshly boiled water. The eggs should be fresh to begin with and completely covered with the solution in an earthen container and kept in a cool place. So I don't know if that's like kind of like a pickled egg kind of situation.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. But I really thought this one had a really interesting variety of not just menu ideas, but also like for decorating and everything. It's kind of like it gives me like a, you know, Martha Stewart Living or Good Housekeeping type of vibes where it's like walking you through the whole day.
Yeah, yeah, I like that idea, and you're definitely kind of seeing that whole um, across the gamut,
Yeah, I can
everything.
imagine this Easter celebration in my mind complete with cream cheese shaped like eggs on top of shredded lettuce.
I can actually see that in my head.
Yeah.
Not sure I'd want to eat it, but I can see it in my head. Yes. Anyway. Well, this was a fun way to explore the connection between life today and the lives our ancestors lived. We'll be tackling other decades and holidays in the newspapers down the line, but for now, you can find the show notes for this episode at passingtheplate.org/58. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
As always, it's been a pleasure sharing these delicious stories with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance, it's a way to connect the dots between our past, present, and future.
And until next time, happy eating, happy connecting, and pass the plate. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.